I want to talk with you guys today why staying out of politics is the last thing from biblical, and how people are Christians are confusing the separation of church and state with staying out of politics. Um, and how this came about is I read an article this morning, and I've got also notes in front of me because I tend to bounce around like a ping pong ball if I don't. So this just keeps me on track. I read an article this morning about, well, this, or actually it was a post. It came out against this Christian leader um, who's just become affiliated with this Christian group that is also politically connected. And this author of this post was coming out against this leader because, it was a clear violation of the separation of church and state. So, that kind of didn't sit right with me at all. So I go and I look at some of this author's other posts, and they're all within the same line. And one of the posts even said, shocker to me, that Christians shouldn't vote. It's not biblical. Well, could you imagine the complete crisis our country would be in if Christians didn't vote per their biblical values? I can't even imagine the complete state, which is where we're at anyway, corruption that our government would be if Christians didn't, use their voice, use their vote to appoint political leaders. But here is the thing. Our Constitution was established to keep government out of church and out of our religious freedoms, not to keep the church out of politics or politics out of the church. It is exactly this backwards attitude is why our country is in the shape that it is in, because our strong Christian, this is Trinity, because our strong Christian attitude, because our strong Christian men and women, because of this attitude, have, for the most part, largely have avoided being in politics. So perhaps this is why, it has left the field wide open for corruption. So let's talk about this. God's people in the Bible never avoided wading into politics. And in fact, God sent them in, feet first. He just sent them in guns blazing. They confronted kings over injustices, immorality, corruption, abuse of authority. They waded into politics in every area. Well, in fact, let's start with Jesus. What did Jesus do? He was flipping tables in the temple because of the corrupt Pharisees. And I guarantee you it was with a holy rage. I can feel it myself. He just went in going, because of the corruption of these people. The rulers, the Jewish rulers had set themselves up as a government unto themselves. And Jesus was calling them out to their faces, calling them hypocrites, snakes, liars, whited sepulchers, painted freshly white on the outside, but nasty on the inside, even called Herod a fox. So Jesus himself was not afraid to confront the corrupt leaders. He wasn't afraid to speak truth. John the Baptist called out Herod for his illegal and immoral marriage. And what happened to him? We all know what happened to him. He lost his head for that because he wasn't afraid to speak truth, to get politically involved. David, who set up David and Saul to be kings? Jesus did. He set up this this government. And David was blasted by the prophet Nathan for adultery with Bathsheba and for murdering her husband Uriah. and Nathan pronounced God's judgment on him. Elijah confronted King Ahab over his idolatry and of abuse of his authority, and he took the vineyard again. What was his name? Naboth. Took the vineyard away from him and murdered him in the process because Naboth didn't want to give it up. Elijah also confronted the Baal prophets of Jezebel. There were 450 of them. This was clear political church duel, right? The church won in this case, showing up these 450 prophets of Baal that there's only one true God, and then Elijah had these 450 prophets killed. Isaiah confronts kings and nations, condemning them for unjust laws and oppression. And I could go on and on about where God's people, got right in the middle of what was going on, the unjust things that were going on against God's people. And God put them there because they were willing participants to fight for God in the political arena. What does the Bible say about these people? Those who are diligent in their business, God will place them before kings. Well, God needs his people who can operate in every single one of these different arenas. And if you're out there poo-pooing it, separation of church and state, well, God can't use you. You're not usable anyway. God's going to use the person who he can place before kings, and that's not going to be you. And it's probably why, because of this whole, we shouldn't get involved in politics, why we have such a dearth, so to speak, of good candidates for presidents, senators, congressmen, political leaders of any kind. Why we have such very few good candidates. If you're a Christian and you have good political beliefs, you're picking from, which is out of the two bad candidate choices, who's the best? It's hard to choose. That's where we're at these days. Because why? Because Christians have gotten out of politics. So whose fault that our government has become so corrupted? It's because there's not the Christian leaders in politics to keep it balanced, to keep people in line, to be that shining light of what true leadership is supposed to look like. So how do we become God's people that are prepared to be placed before kings? Well, I've said it before, I'll say it again. You have to get in the Word. I can tell you, and we can be actually seeking. It's not just something that you have to do, it's something that you're doing for your own benefit. It changes you. It is transformational. I can tell you that from my own experience. It's made me, when I'm seeking, I'm asking the Spirit to lead me into all truth. What happens is I start wanting naturally to become the best version of myself in all the different areas, including my health, my personal growth, all of these areas. I start wanting naturally to become the best me, the best version of me in all of these areas. And something that also happens is in my spirit then is burning inside of me. I turn into warrior mode. So God pushes you into your purpose. He starts showing you the lane that he has for you when you seek him. That's when that's when you start seeing where he wants you, start getting clarity, because your spirit is burning inside of you. You become passionate in certain areas, and you can see a clear path of where you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to do, and that's what you want. Your spirit is burning in that particular area. It may not necessarily be in politics, or it may be. but to be prepared for that person, to be prepared to be that person, so that God, again, can place you before kings. And this may not be on your trajectory at all. You know, he can put you in places where you never expected, because you gave him the opportunity by seeking him, by seeking relationship with him, by preparing yourself through his word, and then letting him lead and direct. He needs those people. He's saying, who shall I send? And looking desperately for those people to, again, place before kings. And why not you? Why can't that be you? So, separation of church and state does not mean that we stay out of politics. It means the state stays out of our business, not you staying out of the business of politics. I hope that has made a difference today, and I will see you guys again next time.